The biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
There's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is. It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Can I say something? You know, this is 60 Minutes, and we can't put on things we can't verify.
You won't put it on because it's bad for Biden.
We can't put on things we can't verify.
Leslie, they spied on my campaign.
Well, we can't verify
It's been totally
that.
verified.
No.
It's been, just go down and get the papers. They spied on my campaign, they got caught.
No.
And then they went much further than that, and they got caught. And you will see that, Leslie, and you know that, but you just don't want to put it on the air.
As a matter of fact, I don't know that.
Look at that apparatchik sit there and argue with Donald Trump. He was right, I should know. It's undeniable. All the evidence is there now. It's all been exposed. Leslie Stahl was lying. Trump was right. And that's how it works in this country. Joining me now, my friend Lee Smith, a wonderful author. I read everything he writes. He has a new book out, I should note, called Disappearing the President. You might want to pick that one up. Okay, Lee, let's pretend like people forget, because people do forget. There are so many scandals and so many new things all the freaking time. Can you explain, for those of us who forget, how did the whole FBI spying on Trump begin? What happened in the beginning? How did all this start?
Well, you know, Jesse, there's something very important that we forget all the time, which I want to highlight, is that, well, first of all, I have to say, I'm thinking about something that you tweeted the other day when you were talking about the centrality of Barack Obama. And I looked at that, what you tweeted, and I'm like, yay, thank you, Jesse Kelly, for saying this, because I hear deep state, I hear administrative state, I hear managerial class, I hear the blob, I hear everything. And all of these abstractions make it much harder for us to deal with what's really going on, and has been going on since at least 2016. And that's Barack Obama. And the person who identified that first was none other than Donald Trump in a March 2017 tweet. I'm talking about Russiagate here, when he said, wow, just found out Obama had my phones tapped at Trump Tower. And everyone said, that's outrageous, that's crazy, that makes no sense. But of course, that's actually what happened. Did he precisely have his wires tapped or his phones tapped? Was do we still use that language now? No, it was a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant on the Trump circle, right? So that's precisely what happened. And so I think that's where we have to start. We have to start by remembering that all of these people, all of the spy chiefs involved in this were Barack Obama's spy chiefs. So I'm so glad to get a chance to, because I was going to tweet or I was going to text you and say, thank you, Jesse. God bless you for bringing that up. But that's actually also a major part of this book, Disappearing the President. We don't have pre-orders available yet, but we will soon. But to talk about the role of Barack Obama, and it starts, Donald Trump is the first person to identify it with that tweet.
How did we get, you're 100% right, and I want people to get it, but how did we get from Barack Obama, his poisonous intel guys, to the Steele dossier from Hillary Clinton? Connect those worlds for me, Lee.
Well, I mean, the Steele dossier, this is something, there's a basic misunderstanding about this, right? Because when Christopher Steele came out, he was described as this, British super spy, right? That's how important that's what a great man he was, that he'd found, and of course, less than a month, he'd found this incredible secret relationship between Donald Trump and the Kremlin, right? That was the story. Nothing of this sort happened. The way to understand Christopher Steele is he was an FBI informant, right? That's who Steele was. He had one time worked for British intelligence, but he also worked for Russian oligarchs based in London. Steele was a confidential informant. That's who was hired, right? The Clinton campaign hired an FBI confidential informant to do the Steele dossier, right? So again, this is important to keep in mind. At the time, we were surprised to see in 2017, 2018, we were surprised to see, oh my goodness, the Clinton campaign paid for this. It must be all about them. Hillary Clinton, that the campaign paid for it, is very important. But something, again, that we must not forget, it's so crucial, is that all of these spy chiefs were working for Barack Obama. and Barack Obama was, in fact, read into Russiagate, the anti-Trump plot, right? John Brennan tells us this in his handwritten notes, that Barack Obama was aware of what the Clinton campaign was doing by vilifying Donald Trump as a Russian agent. So, Jesse, I just think it's so important now, looking at the Steele dossier and looking at other things that have happened since then, whether it's the special counsel investigation, the Mueller investigation, whether it's the impeachments of Donald Trump, whether it's January 6th, whether it's these various cases against Donald Trump, the DOJ cases, the Fulton County case, right? The Alvin Bragg case in Manhattan. It's really important for us to see these as all instruments of the Barack Obama faction, which is the way to think about what's happened here since at least 2016.
Lee, can you explain why Russia? Okay, and obviously, as we've talked about, as you know, as I know, everything ties back to that dirty communist Obama getting in the government, running out anyone remotely normal and filling up the government with Maoists. But why Russia? Where'd this come from?
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, I think it's perhaps a Cold War habit, right? One of the surprising things, which I believe that you've remarked on, Jesse, is as much as anyone, it's like, so since when does the left have problems with Russia, right? I mean, we know that this was one of our core problems during the course of the Cold War, the left's adoration of the Soviet Union. So I think this was one of the threads. I think that that's one of the reasons that they looked at Russia. There were other reasons too. There were intelligence service problems with the Russians, right, dating back to Ukraine in 2014. So this is another issue. But I also think that this is one of the major tells, right? Because as I've described frequently, there is no American president who's been more pro-Moscow than Barack Obama, right? Whether this is what happened, whether this was Eastern Europe, with Ukraine and Russia, or whether this was the Middle East, especially Syria. Let's remember what Barack Obama did in order to preserve the Iran nuclear deal. He got the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad to turn over his unconventional weapons to Vladimir Putin. So this was Putin helping out Obama. And no one will ever forget the line that Obama whispered to Dmitry Medvedev, tell Vlad that after the next election, I'll have more flexibility. So the idea, this should have been a tell for people inside of Washington, but of course it was not. But the fact how close Barack Obama was to Putin, how close he was to Moscow, the idea that the same people who were describing Obama's closeness to Moscow and how this was a good thing in Syria the same sources turned around and said, "Ooh, look out for Donald Trump. He has all these ties to Vladimir Putin." So that should have been a tell.
Lee, tell me about this book, Disappearing the President.
Well, I mean, this is really, what we do is here, what the story I'm telling is, it starts off with Russiagate, and it comes to the president. It shows you see on the cover one of the iconic photographs of President Trump standing up at the Butler rally, but it really goes through this real attack on Donald Trump, on the country. And again, I think one of the most crucial parts of the book is it shows what Barack Obama did from 2016 to the present. Again, reminding people of Barack Obama's hand in this. It's not a mystery of what's going on. It's not a mystery that Joe Biden was an avatar. We talk about who's running the government now. Well, this was a question that most of us have been asking since Joe Biden took office. And most of us have pointed out it's Barack Obama, right? And that's what's happening with Kamala Harris, too. So while it also explains the anti-Trump plot from 2016 to the present, it also explains this whole idea of the deep state. We need to really focus. We need to bear down and show what's really going on here. It's about the Barack Obama faction.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.